Hello. Today we will be learning how to write linear equations in slope-intercept form from word problems. Okay, go ahead and add writing equations from word problems in your table of contents. You'll notice I'm on page 75 to 76. If we are still in Unit 4, our objective is to write equations in slope-intercept form from word problems. And the essential question is, how do I write linear equations in slope-intercept form from word problems? Feel free to pause the video to write all that down. So before we begin, I have some keywords that you definitely need to write all of this down. So we know that the slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, or it could be minus b. Y is the y coordinate of an ordered pair. We can find this in a word problem by looking for the total. Okay, we know that m represents the slope. An important keyword that we're going to look for is per. We could add each to this, or every. The other thing we need to look for is rate of change, whether it's increasing or decreasing. Okay, x represents the x-coordinate in the ordered pair, usually a unit of measure. Okay, so like miles, minutes, pounds, seconds, hours, gallons, feet. Currency, which is money. And then b is our starting point. Okay, the y-intercept, it's an unchanged amount, so something that you may pay or do in the very beginning. Some keywords to look for here are flat rate, flat fee, baseline, monthly fee. Okay, so anything that suggests that that's where you start. So go ahead and pause the video and make sure you have this chart written down to help you when we're looking for keywords. Hopefully you've paused the video. So let's begin. So our first problem here, Jackson pays for his family to go bowling. He first rents shoes for everyone, and then he pays a certain amount per game that his family plays as shown in the graph. So when I'm reading this, the initial amount where it says he first rents shoes for everyone, so that's the initial amount. That's going to be the y-intercept. And then if you see per game, that's going to be our slope. Now this particular one has a graph, so we already know how to write equations from the graph. So let's find our slope by doing rise over run. Now we need to figure out what we're counting by. So 4, 8, 12, 16. So it's a rise of 4 and a run of 1. So our slope becomes 4 over 1, or just 4. And our y-intercept is where we start here, and that's at 16. So our equation is y equals 4x plus 16. So remember I told you it's important that when we are talking about word problems to understand what each represents. So the slope represents the cost of the game. So one game is $4. Okay, and the y-intercept represents the cost of the shoes. So it was renting the shoes, because that's where we started. And then the y would be the total that it all came to when they were done, and x is the number of games they play. Okay, let's look at another example. A plane uses a certain amount of fuel based on the number of miles it travels. as shown in the table. Okay, well, in this case, I'm going to have to find my slope from the table. Okay, so gallons would be our X, miles traveled would be our Y. So to find the slope, we would do 30 divided by 9. I'm going to reduce this by 3. So I get 10 over 3. The y-intercept would be 0 because we start at 0. So my equation would be y equals 10/3 x. Remember, we don't have 0. So the slope represents miles per gallon. And the y-intercept means that the plane isn't moving. Luke's family goes to the movies and purchases a large popcorn. They are debating whether or not to purchase any drinks. The table below shows how much they'll spend based on the number of drinks they decide to purchase. So again, this time we're going to use the table. So for my slope, I'm actually going to have to calculate it this time. So we would have the change in y. So it would be 10 minus 625 over the change in x. So 10 minus 625 is 375. Over 1. So the slope would be 375. My y-intercept we find when x is 0, so that's going to be 625. So my equation is y equals 375 x plus 625. So in this case, the slope is the cost of drinks. It's actually the cost of one drink. And the y-intercept is the cost of the movie tickets. Okay, let's try some without any tables or graphs. You're visiting Pittsburgh, and a taxi company charges a flat fee of $3 for using the taxi, an additional 75 cents per mile. Write an equation that you could use to find the cost of a taxi ride to Pittsburgh. X represents the number of miles, and Y represents the total cost. So we need to pick out our y-intercept. and our slope. So here's a keyword per, so that means 75 cents per mile is our slope, because that's being multiplied by x, the number of miles. And then our other keyword here is flat fee for $3. So that's your starting point, that's your B. So the way we set this up is y equals 75 cents x plus 3. So let's try another one. A plumber charges a fee of $50 to make a house call. He also charges $25 an hour for labor. Write an equation that you could use to find the amount a plumber charges for a house call based on the number of hours of labor. So again, we need to pick out the slope. $25 an hour means I'm multiplying 25 times every hour. So that would be our slope. And our initial fee is 50. So the way we set this one up is y equals 25 times x, or 25x, plus 50. An attorney charges a fixed fee of $250 for an initial meeting and $150 per an hour for a house call. Write an equation in slope-intercept form. This one we're going to take it a step further. Find the charge for 26 hours of work. So let's first write the equation. So hopefully you're recognizing that 150 is the slope and 250 is the y-intercept. So the way I'm going to set this up, y equals 150x plus 250. Now from there, I'm going to go a little bit further. I want to know the total cost for 26 hours of work. Okay, well, x represents the number of hours, so I'm really finding the total, which is y. So 150 times 26. So remember, we use that substitution method. And from there, you can just use your calculator for this. So 150 times 26 is 390. Then I'm going to add 250 to that. So my total is 4,150. So that's how much it would cost to hire this attorney. A bike shop rents mountain bikes for $8.50 insurance charge plus $3.50 an hour. For how many hours can a person rent a bike with $33? So now I've got three things to add in there. Let's pick out our initial amount. So the initial amount you're going to pay for is $8.50. So that's our B. $3.50 per hour. That's our M. Now, a person has a total of $33, so total represents Y. Hours is a unit, so that's going to represent X. So now to set this up, I'm going to have 33 equals 350. So there's my slope. I'm looking for x, so x is left. And then I have plus 850. So we solve for x. So this time it becomes a two-step equation. So if you remember, we can use that Great Wall of Algebra. I'm going to subtract 850 on both sides. So 33 minus 850 would give us 2450 equals 350x. Now I need to divide by 350. So 2450 divided by 350 is 7. And when we answer a question, we need to answer it with the unit. So this person can rent the bike for 7 hours. There are 2 phone plans. One plan has $28 one-time fee and 9 cents a minute. The second is 13 cents a minute. How many minutes of use will it make the plan, or will it take to make the plans cost the same? Okay, so in this case, I need to set up 2 equations. So my first one is going to be with this sentence here, and the second equation will be here. So the first one, y equals, says a plan has a $28 one-time fee and 9 cents a minute. 9 cents, it's not just 9x. Okay, we have to change that to cents. So that would be 0.09 x plus 28. So there's our first equation. The next one charges only 13 cents a minute. So that's 0.13x. There is no setup fee or one-time fee, so that means we don't have a b. That would be like saying plus 0. Now, we want these 2 plans to be the same, so that means I set them equal to each other. So the way I really set this up to figure that out is I say 0.09x plus 28 equals 0 and 1300x. And now I solve this as a multi-step equation. So first we need to combine like terms. So I have like terms with x. So I'm going to subtract that 9 cents a minute on both sides because that's the smaller one. So I'm going to be left with 28 equals 13 cents minus 9 cents is 4 cents. And then I divide by 4, or that 400ths. So that means x is going to equal 700. So we would get x is 700. But what does that mean? Well, that means it's going to take 700 minutes of talking on the phone for these plans to cost the same. Remember to always write your units. A construction crew is extending a highway sound barrier that is 13 miles long. The car builds a half mile per week. Write an equation for the length y in miles of the barrier after x weeks. So once you get that first question, ignore the second one for now, okay? So we set this up. A construction crew is extending a highway sound barrier that is 13 miles long. 13 would be our total. Okay, that's the y. So 13 is the total. Here where it says a half mile per week, okay, that's our slope. Now, do we have a starting? Do they already have some done? No, they do not. So now I would move to the next one and solve this. How many weeks will it take them to create the entire sound barrier? So that means I multiply by the reciprocal here to solve this equation. So I need to multiply by 2 over 1. So this will cancel. I'm left with x. And that's going to be 26. Because 2 times 13 is 26. And 26 divided by 1 is just 26. Okay, well, what does that mean? That's 26 weeks. So it's going to take 26 weeks for them to finish the sound barrier. Last question. You pay $510 to rent a storage unit for 3 months. The total cost includes an initial deposit plus a monthly fee of $160. Write an equation that represents your total cost in Y dollars after X months. Tell me what the y-intercept represents. So at this time, I'd like for you to pause the video and see if you can solve this problem. Okay, hopefully at this time you've paused the video, so let's see how you did. So the first thing you need to do is write an equation. So our equation should be 510, because that's your total. 3 months, so X represents the months. And the initial deposit, or the starting value, was 160. Now it tells me, what does the y-intercept represent? Okay, so the y-intercept is this 160. So that's the amount you pay in order to set up your storage unit. So just to open up the unit, you're going to have to pay 160 plus whatever it costs to rent it for a month. So essentially, that 160 is just opening the storage unit account. Okay, hopefully you are doing well with this. You are ready to move on to your assignment for today.